5, 4. Good afternoon. My name is John Hartline. I'm the chairman of the Patuxent River Commission, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the city of Laurel for providing this excellent facility and the logistical support to have our first public meeting for the Patuxent River Commission here today. It's our hope to increase the public engagement with the Patuxent River Commission and enlist your interest and support in improving the quality of the river and improving the public's understanding of the Patuxent River watershed. It's also we would like to increase your personal enjoyment of the Patuxent River and its tributaries in your own communities. I'd like to turn the meeting over to Jason Dubow. Jason Dubow is the staff for the Patuxent River Commission, and he'll take care of introductions today. Thank you, Jason.
All right, thank you very much, John. So I want to introduce the commission members who are here today. We probably will have a few more that are coming in late. But first we have our chair, John Hartline, representing the Tri-County Council of Southern Maryland. Thanks, John. Secondly, we have our vice chair, Chris Perry, with Bourne Environmental. He represents one of the environmental citizen slots on the commission. We also have Mary Dolan, also here today, who also represents one of the environmental citizen slots on the commission. We have the Honorable Mike Les, former city council member, representing a municipality on the commission. We have Dr. Solange Filoso, representing the president of University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science. Thank you for being here. And then we have John Denniston, representing the state agency, Maryland Department of Transportation. Thanks very much for being here. And my name is Jason Dubow. I serve as lead staff to the Patuxent River Commission, and I also serve as the designee for the Maryland Department of Planning. Thanks everybody for being here today, and the public as well. We appreciate it. We have a few announcements. Right now we don't have a quorum at this time, so we will not be able to vote on minutes for the last couple meetings, but we did have some announcements, important announcements and updates. First, we have some sad news that our former representative of one of our development slots, Hiram Tanner Jr., passed away earlier this year in February. He had many decades worth of experience with the various development projects, whether they were water and sewer type projects or other types of engineering type of projects. So we are sorry that he's passed away, and to his family. He served on the commission for about a year or so, and including on our steering committee. So we thank him for that, and our condolences to his family. Secondly, we wanted to note that the annual Patuxent Wade-In will be June 11th at the Jefferson-Patterson Park and Museum, which is a facility of the Maryland Department of Planning. It's down in Calvert County, and everybody is welcome to participate. That particular wade-in, as it is every year, has various politicians who will, and other dignitaries who will present and speak at the wade-in. And also, beforehand, we're going to have a special 2-hour type of environmental fair where different organizations will be able to present at different tables, different materials that they have to encourage environmental education about the Patuxent River and advocacy for the river as well. A couple notes, 2 different letters that the commission did vote by special vote were sent on as the Patuxent River Commission agreed to. First, there was the letter to new Governor Wes Moore sent after the March 8th Patuxent River Commission meeting. That particular letter asked the governor to please meet with us, as we've had previous governors meet with the Patuxent River Commission in the past. And secondly, we had a letter sent by the deadline for comments on a landfill, a Chesapeake Terrace Rubble Landfill, that is adjacent to the, proposed to be adjacent to Patuxent Research Refuge. That was sent by special vote after the April 19th Patuxent River Commission meeting. We also wanted to let people know that we had a successful field trip to the Magruders Ferry Living Shoreline, a project that our Vice Chair, Chris Perry, and his company helped to put together. So we were very happy that that worked out, and all the commission members who participated, it was great. So thank you. And then lastly, we wanted to note that the Patuxent Challenge, and we have that on the video screen right now, the Patuxent Challenge, which is an effort amongst multiple counties, tourism and recreation and parks departments in the various counties and at the city of Laurel, put together the Patuxent Challenge, patuxentchallenge.org, and you'll see that various sites are listed here, participating parks and county and WSSC water, different properties. So the idea of the Chesapeake Patuxent Challenge is for people, anybody really, to go visit these sites, take a photograph at the particular sign that says Patuxent Challenge, and it's really meant to encourage people to enjoy all the various wonderful recreational and tourism amenities that the river, without the river, those amenities really wouldn't exist. So we encourage everybody to take a look to the website, patuxentchallenge.org, and post on social media your participation on at those sites, and to encourage people to continue to enjoy and value the Patuxent River and its many tributaries. So those are all the announcements and updates that I have at this time. And Chair, John, or anything else before we proceed to the presentation on the annual action plan?
I don't believe so. I just think that we could move forward with the action plan for this year.
Okay, thanks so much. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is move forward with presenting on the Patuxent River Commission's annual action plan. It's currently a draft for 2023. So the annual action plan guides the agenda for the Patuxent River Commission, which meets generally around 7, maybe 8 times each year. And it guides the Commission's agenda as it works to implement the strategies of a larger document called the Patuxent River Policy Plan. The Patuxent River Policy Plan most recently was adopted in 2014 by the Patuxent River Commission and by the elected bodies of 8 local governments represented on the Commission, the 7 counties and the city of Laurel. The Patuxent River Policy Plan was then adopted by the Maryland General Assembly during the 2016 legislative session. And by statute, the Patuxent River Policy Plan provides a policy framework for local jurisdictions and the state. The general policies of the Patuxent River Policy Plan relate to preservation, advocacy, and excitement. For preservation, local jurisdictions in the state will work toward the preservation of the Patuxent River and the land within its watersheds, and the restoration of the ecological and economic functions of the river. The second general policy described in the Patuxent River Policy Plan is advocacy. Local jurisdictions in the state will advocate for the Patuxent River by raising awareness among the general public and elected and appointed officials of the challenges the river faces and make recommendations for improvements. The third general policy is excitement. Local jurisdictions in the state will create excitement about the Patuxent River and its value as a natural, scientific, economic, cultural, and educational resource. So together, preservation, advocacy, and with the X in excitement, that is equals PAX, generally a main kind of acronym for the Patuxent River. So then we turn back to the 2023 Patuxent River Commission Annual Action Plan. So all of the action items in here are meant to implement one or more of those general policies in the Patuxent River Policy Plan. The first one, well, before I get to the first one, I should describe the fact that we've made an effort to distinguish short-term actions from long-term actions in the action plan, recognizing that long-term actions generally require 1 or more years to accomplish. So the Commission established a separate long-range work group to explore the different issues that require long-term type study and report back periodically to the Commission on its progress. Whereas the short-term actions are those that should be completed by the end of 2023. So for short-term actions, we have 7 altogether. First is one that's already happened, which was to hold a funding forum and complete other actions to help the town of Eagle Harbor in southern Prince George's County to achieve community environmental goals, including obtaining a stormwater and floodwater management solution that meets their needs. To be clear, the funding forum has been held with support of the commission, but of course these other actions to meet the needs of the town have not yet been implemented. Furthermore, related to that, helping the town and other jurisdictions can include obtaining assistance through financial or technical type work provided through the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Secondly, this is something also that's already happened. The Patuxent River Commission established a geodatabase work group, and based on that work of the work group in 2022, they identified the need to provide training on a great resource called the Maryland Watershed Resources Registry. And that training has been provided to interested PRC members and staff. And the point of it is that over time, when we have difficult issues on the agenda for commission meetings, that we should facilitate analyses of those issues through working with the Maryland Watershed Resources Registry tool. Another short-term action is a goal to meet with Governor Moore in 2023 to discuss the Patuxent River Commission's mission and achievement of its goals, which, as we'll note in this annual action plan, includes identifying needed changes such as laws, regulations, policies, and science to achieve the restoration of the Patuxent River and its tributaries by 2040. For members who are arriving late, we have some handouts here at the left side, as well as table cards for you. Thank you. For the fourth short-term action and fifth, the Commission noted that it would be important, given the large amount of funding that is available and the importance of issues related to climate change, that it would be good to identify and assemble several Patuxent River-specific projects so that they can be put up for possible consideration for funding, whether it's through Maryland Sea Grant funds, Department of Natural Resources funds, such as Resiliency Through Restoration, or other grant programs that focus on both, again, resiliency as climate change continues and river restoration. On an annual basis, the Commission intends to support spring cleanups of the Patuxent River and its tributaries. And so far this year, we were able to get the word out about the Jug Bay wetlands reserves cleanup in the spring. And the last two short-term actions for this year is to develop a protocol, to develop notification options and standard questions to answer for notification and information needs prior to votes by the Commission. And the idea behind this, which we'll get into more detail after this presentation, is really to help the Commission have as much information as possible about challenging issues that it must vote on, and also to identify any possible conflicts of interest. And lastly, the Commission has already received some initial support for a Patuxent River report card from the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, but the Commission recognized the need to reach consensus on the scope of work for a Patuxent River report card. And ideally, once that's done this year, the Commission will work to obtain funding for the creation and periodic updates of that report card. Next, we move to long-term actions. Altogether, the Commission has identified 6 long-term actions to begin working on or to continue working on this year. And again, these are multi-year efforts, given the challenging aspect of some of these long-term actions. As noted at the beginning of this presentation, one of the most important is to determine what needs to change in order to achieve restoration of the Patuxent River. And this has an ideal goal of 2040. And as the Commission has noted, this should include a variety of types of analyses, including things like existing requirements that discourage removal of invasive species, so that we can facilitate tree planting, including the statewide goal of planting 5 million trees in Maryland. Related to the report card, the Commission has noted that the report card would be very important to develop to assess water and living resources conditions in each part of the major part of the river, not just the tidal, but also the non-tidal, and its tributaries, including the Western Branch, Little Patuxent, Middle Patuxent, and others. The work group, that's the long-range work group, that is, will determine the process for developing the report card, identifying potential formats, and potential funding opportunities. Over time, ideally, the report card should discuss also the river's social and ecological responses to various policy and programs, so that the Commission can see the success of those policies and programs, and therefore, as an adaptive response, inform possible changes to those actions. Given the Chesapeake Bay Agreement's efforts to establish and restore wetlands, and the fact that the Bay effort is unfortunately behind schedule in achieving restoration of wetlands, one idea the Commission has put forth that would also benefit tourism and recreation would be to establish one new wetland park in each county within 5 years. Those can include things like Jug Bay Wetland Reserve, and also things like Battle Creek Cypress Swamp down in Calvert County. To help inform this effort, the long-range work group hopes to compile background materials that highlight benefits and opportunities that wetland parks offer, working with county staff to identify potential locations and provide recommendations for potential funding opportunities for these new parks. And let's see, we have a couple more, I believe. Next is to, similar to what the Commission has done in support of the town of Eagle Harbor, identify technical and financial assistance opportunities for other jurisdictions and or unincorporated areas in the watershed, similar to what the funding forum approach and project identification approach used for the Patuxent River Commission's assistance to the town of Eagle Harbor. And really that gets to asking those jurisdictions and those communities what are their needs, and then working with our sister agencies and local governments to try to find funding to support their implementation of those projects. One more long-term action is what we're doing here today, which is raising public awareness of the work of the Commission through increased outreach and opportunity for public feedback. And of course, trying to get a better handle of potential climate change impacts to the river and its tributaries so that we can plan for needed resilience measures. We'd work with our academic leads on the Commission, including the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science and the Morgan State University Pearl Laboratory researchers and others to achieve this goal. And that summarizes the annual action plan. Again, we don't have a quorum at this time, but if anyone wants to, anyone of the Commission members wants to have any thoughts about the action plan, as we noted before, we've worked over the last 3 or 4 meetings to develop this content. But if there's any kind of fatal flaws, we should probably identify those. So I've just opened the floor to any Commission members who have any questions about that. And John, since we have many people in the public, we could either open, have public comment on the action plan now, or you could have the open floor later on. It's up to you.
Let's go ahead and get to the public.
Okay.
Anybody here that would like to speak?
Sure. Yeah, if anybody wants to, in the public, wants to have any thoughts about the annual action plan, which is still draft, it's not final, you're welcome to go up to the microphone and say a few words. It's up to you. We appreciate your attendance tonight. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Dyer with Laurel for the Patuxent, and I just had a question. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly where. I think it was in the long-term goals. It was about discouraging removal of invasive species in order to plant trees. I just wondered, why would you discourage removing invasive species?
Sure, I think that's from our member Frank Allen, who's not here today. But I think what he meant, and we maybe need to clarify this, is that we definitely don't want to discourage removal of invasives, but there's certain requirements that I guess that are in place that I think he says are impediments to being able to plant trees. So I think we need some. That's a good point. We need to clarify that issue with him to make sure that we're not saying we're discouraging removal of invasives. So
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's just how it read to me.
thank you. That's a very good point. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Mike McLaughlin, also with Laurel for the Patuxent. Just a question about the wetlands park.
Oh,
You
sure.
said, one per county. Is that at least one, or because Prince George's County is a large county and a good portion of the river traverses the county, could that be, language be made to say at least one?
Yes, of course, I agree. Yeah, I think it's absolutely something that could be modified like that. I absolutely agree. Anybody else in the public want to say anything about the proposed plan? Okay, John?
I wanted to add one thing regarding invasive species. I know that I'm also, at the Tri-County Council, we have SMATIC, the Southern Maryland Ag Development Commission, and removing invasive species sometimes can be damaging, and we occasionally use through SMATIC sending goats out to eat up some of the invasive species and clear out those that are close to the ground without affecting the trees in those areas. So when you're removing certain types of invasive species, you do have to be careful that you're not damaging a lot of larger trees when you're, especially if you're removing vines or other things that are on the ground. So if they can use a more natural way of having goats eat up the problem, that's helpful. I also wanted to mention that SMATIC is currently putting out an RFP to find uses for the blue catfish, which has been invading the bay. And again, when we look at the quantities, you want to get the catfish, but you don't want to damage other fish that are in the bay. And it's a little tricky, but we do know that we are literally going to have to eat hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds of blue catfish to reduce their presence in the bay, and they're greatly damaging both the crabs and other fish that are in the bay. So these are complex problems. We have put the long-term group on that because these aren't going to be solved in a year. These are several-year-long projects, and they require some study before we take action so we don't cause other damage or unintended consequences as we try to solve one problem. Southern Maryland Ag Development Commission. It was created by the tobacco buyout in 1999, 2000. And they are doing agricultural development in the 5 counties in Southern Maryland. So it's Prince George's, Anne Arundel, Charles, St. Mary's, and Calvert. So, and for them and for the state, the definition of agriculture isn't just what you see on the land, it's also aquaculture, what you see in the water, and it's also timber. So it's all encompassing of basically where humans use things that are grown for their own benefit. So I know that we've worked hard at our Tri-County Council and SMATIC division to preserve land in the whole watershed, and also some areas in the Potomac River. There's actually 2 areas in that watershed. There's what's in the Patuxent, and there's what's in the Potomac. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Edification, how does removing invasive vines hurt big trees? I mean, unless you're poisoning the whole area in general. But if you're manually removing them, it seems like it would help the tree.
Well, not, if you're manually removing them, that's one thing, but, there are other techniques for removing them and for attacking invasive species. They may involve Roundup or other herbicides or equipment, going in with heavy equipment and, tamping down the ground in such a way that it takes a long time for the ground to recover. So we prefer the lighter hand, like you're saying, either doing it by hand or by animals, as opposed to the heavy equipment methods, if that can be done.
So then it might be useful to actually say that manual removal of vines, barberry, et cetera, is actually a good thing.
Okay. All right. Yes, we'll consider that, and we'll probably make the appropriate wording changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me reread this. Debbie, thank you. Yeah, let me reread this and see if I've gotten this straight. So specifically it says, determine what needs to change to achieve restoration of the Patuxent River by 2040. This should include an analysis of existing requirements to discourage removal of invasive species to facilitate tree planting. So it looks like the focus is on what does Maryland currently require that tends to discourage. I'm a little confused. That what kind of existing requires that tend to discourage? I thought that would, yeah. House existing requirements. Yeah, I think we need some clarity from Frank when we talk to him. Just. Oh, I see. Mm-hmm. I see. Okay, so yeah, I think we'll need to make sure that we are all on the same page about it. And so, Debbie, I appreciate that. So this is likely what you're saying is that the requirements currently discourage removal of invasive species. So we will definitely make sure to clarify that issue. Thank you. Any other discussion about the draft annual action plan or public comment? Any other thoughts? Okay. All right. Well, Chair, John, should we move on to the discussion of the protocols work group findings so far?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay. John, do you want me to do this part, or would you like to? It's up to you.
Why don't you go ahead
Okay.
and ask for you can look at the report. and ask
Absolutely.
for any members that want to report on it.
Absolutely. Let me see. So take a look at your handout related to the recommendation of the protocol work group. So the work group held its first meeting on April 14th. Commissioners in attendance were myself, Margaret Everson, and John Hartline. Staff included Debbie Cornwell and Dan Rosen. This came out of the meeting of the Patuxent River Commission on January 8th, where the commission discussed a process for learning about and responding to matters of concern. One of the issues is that the commission often receives notices of important matters late in the process. For example, the commission did not know about this proposed landfill in Anne Arundel County, the Chesapeake Terrace Rubble Landfill, until rather late in the process. Luckily, there was still time and flexibility so the commission was able to send comments about it. But commission schedule and approval process sometimes can challenge us in providing a prompt response. So the protocol work group was created to come up with recommendations on how to address this problem. So 3 items so far. We're not taking any kind of vote today, and we can't yet because we don't have a quorum. But 3 initial findings from the commission were to note that at each meeting of the commission, those commissioners who represent state agencies or local governments should provide information on upcoming hearings, issues open for input, et cetera. So that would give the commission some timely notification about issues of concern. In between meetings, commissioners could certainly notify everyone by posting to some type of shared document, perhaps a clearinghouse of some sort, again, information that would be of interest to the commission as a whole. The commission then would decide, perhaps on a threshold, for which items are most important to the Patuxent River, so the commission doesn't have too many notices, but can at least try to filter through them. This third recommendation is that the commission should also devise the means for ruling out any conflicts of interest or appearances thereof between commissioners and matters under review. And that's really, I think that's really just being careful so commission members aren't, or the commission as itself is not in a bad situation. But those are the 3 recommendations that the protocol work group has come up with just the first meeting. But we wanted to at least share that with the commission and get your guidance as commission members on whether it's going the right direction, additional thoughts for the protocol work group to be considering as it moves forward. So John, anything you wanted to add to that?
I guess I'd like to add that it's been a continuing problem. I've been on the commission now, this is my 9th year, and it seems like quite often it's difficult to get information. The commission doesn't get information about projects until they go to public comment. Quite often those projects have been in the process for not just a few months, but through a number of public development hearings and notifications, and it's not an easy process to get the information. From what we have is what is probably 8 very large counties in the watershed, and then you have all of the cities that are in the watershed. So some of these projects, we wouldn't know which one ahead of time, might have a negative effect on the Patuxent River. So this work group's recommendations are tried to get that information to the commission earlier in the process. So it gives us time to study what projects we may want to take under consideration and ignore information that has no effect or no meaningful effect on the quality of the Patuxent River. So that's the objective. But again, these are not simple issues because they affect not only just the river itself, but economic development within the state and the watershed. So we have to balance to make sure that the projects are not harmful or not particularly harmful, and yet we all live in the watershed, and we can't stop development. We have to balance and do what is within our jurisdiction to make sure that this committee and the elected officials make the best informed decisions on the development in the watershed. So that's our objective, and it's complex.
Thank you. And any commission members, if you have any thoughts or comments, please just put the microphone next to you and appreciate it.
Are we mostly talking about commission members bringing it to the commission as a whole? Because the other thing, I think that's what we were originally talking about here, but the other thing that dawned on me is if we have a lot of public interaction, which would be great for people in the watershed to know that there's a Patuxent River Commission, They might have a whole lot of things that they want us to address. And did you guys talk about that in any way?
We didn't talk about that too much at this point, but one of the things that we had discussed was some sort of a clearinghouse, because obviously we don't have staff to handle hundreds and hundreds of referrals from multiple jurisdictions. So if we do set up a clearinghouse, we have to figure out how that might be staffed and what amount of authority they may have to forward something for the consideration of the commission, or what parameters. So if we decide for a clearinghouse, we also have to decide what level of responsibility and authority we might delegate to that clearinghouse.
Any other commission members have any thoughts or questions about these draft recommendations? Just feel free to move the microphone close to you, please. It does, yeah.
Okay, so just to rewind the clock a little bit, in the old days, the commission used to meet around the watershed in different places, and so there was much more public engagement because people local to those meetings would actually come to the meeting, and they would share with us things that were on their mind, things that were of concern, and so on. So I would like to point out that the more public engagement we do, I know we have kind of a small meeting today, but it's a step I feel strongly in the right direction. The more transparent we are to the public, the more likely we'll also get wind of some of these things that are kind of out there in the grapevine, but we've kind of, between the pandemic and kind of the evolution of the commission, gotten far from the grapevine. We're no longer on the grapevine as much as we could be, let me put it that way. So it's not a specific recommendation other than the more public engagement, the more likely we will find out about these types of things and be able to discern which ones are really red hot, which ones are really more NIMBY, which ones are worth our attention as a body. Just a thought.
Thank you. Any other commission members have thoughts on the recommendations so far? So I think the point of the work group is that it can continue to meet and take in this feedback that we've received today, and just come back to the commission. The short-term action for the annual action plan is for the work group to complete its work at the end of the year. So we still have about half a year or so to complete work at this time. Let me just see if we have a quorum yet. Oh, Jennifer, do you have a comment, please?
Just one clarification on the first recommendation bullet. It says state agencies and local government should provide information about upcoming. As the federal facilities representative, I would suggest federal be added to that list.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments about the protocol work group recommendations? John, did you want to have open it for public comment on these? Or do you want to wait till the open floor? We're almost out of agenda items, so.
Well, if we have any public comment, let's ask for it now.
Okay, any public comment about these protocols at all? Yes, please, if you would come to the front mic.
Go quickly what both were said about the public input, because we're basically saying the same thing that John was saying about getting notification about things late after they've already occurred. It would be nice if the input that we have is actually input before decisions have been made. And just to clarify, when you introduced, you said the first public meeting, is that the first public meeting of this year, or have you had public meetings before?
We've had public meetings, four public meetings, and we announced them through our Patuxent River Commission website.
Okay.
Yeah, which is, you have to go to planning.maryland.gov, but on the bottom left of the website is the Patuxent River Commission's website.
And I think that idea of traveling work groups is a great idea.
Okay.
Get more people involved.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other?
I'd like
please,
to
John.
add,
Yes.
I'd like to add to that. All of our meetings are public, but during the pandemic, we decided to go virtual in order to continue to do our work. So I think that our experience with that has taught us that at the virtual meetings, we had very close to 100% attendance because people didn't have to travel anywhere. It saved them time. So the commission, it was not unusual for us to have 32 of 34 members, 35 members at one of those virtual meetings. But on the other hand, that also makes it people who are technology constrained. I think they called at some time, I've heard the term used for us older citizens, technological immigrants, because we don't speak the language very well. Those people have trouble attending, and they're quite often have the experience that we need, and they have the time that we need to have them participate. So one goal of this meeting and hopefully of regular future meetings is to record them, make them public, and encourage the public, and that means all of the people out in the audience, to get more engaged and more interested with the Patuxent River, not only with us, but in their local communities. And in the Patuxent cleanup, I can say there is a huge participation in the Potomac cleanup. And my goal, personal goal, is to get that kind of a spirit for the Patuxent River and in the Patuxent watershed. Raise the awareness. This is the longest river in the state of Maryland that's wholly contained in the state of Maryland. And the responsibility for cleaning that river primarily rests with us. So we would like the public to be engaged and understand not just the river itself, but the whole watershed. You may have streams in your neighborhood that pass to the Patuxent River. The map that Jason showed at the beginning of the meeting was very helpful in understanding where this is. My office happens to be my primary office is in Hughesville. It happens to lie about 3 miles from the edge of the Patuxent watershed. If we were on the other side of a hill, we would be in the Patuxent watershed. On our side of the hill, we're in the Potomac watershed. So understanding that your water may be miles and miles from the Patuxent River, but that's where it ends up is important that the public understands that.
Thank you. Any other comments on the protocols work group recommendations? Well, John, at this point, we have an open floor opportunity for discussion. Near the end of the meetings, we often have any issues by members of the Patuxent River Commission that wanted to bring forward anything, any projects they're doing and things that might be of interest to the commission or any problems they may have. So I would call for any of our members to want to tell about events they've had or issues they'd like to raise. Yeah. Thank you.
So one event that we just had at Patuxent Research Refuge, Jennifer Greiner with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Patuxent Research Refuge in Laurel. And we recently had our first ever Cops and Bobbers fishing event for families in the area in partnership with Prince George's County Police Department. We had 125 families come out on April 15th. It was raining in the morning, so we had indoor air archery with the kids and families in the morning, and then the weather cleared up, and they all went out to Lake Reddington and learned to fish with police. It was a great success, and the police department would like to have 2 a year. They want to have one in the spring and one in the fall. So that was a good news thing. And one on the issue of raising deadlines and public hearings. May 24th is the close of public input on the Bowie Mitchellville Master Plan Sectional Map Amendment. This is Prince George's County is taking input through May 24th, and the refuge intends to submit comments on that as we did on the landfill. Similar set of concerns. This is over 200-acre parcel that is forested currently. It is adjacent to Patuxent Refuge and actually within our approved acquisition boundary. So we are a potentially interested buyer of all or a portion of this forest. It is also adjacent to Bowie State University, and it's proposed for development over that, almost the entire parcel. So just wanted to call that May 24th deadline for comment to the commission's attention and the public as well.
Thank you. Any other items for open floor discussion?
I'll promote something that's actually happening at the Visitor Center. I just got an email today that there's an early succession habitat symposium that's going to happen at Patuxent. I always call it Research Refuge or Research Center, but at the Visitor Center, I think University of Maryland Extension is putting it on in partnership with Quail Forever. They're just trying to get a lot of landowners interested in some of the habitat restoration that's needed for quail and other species like that to bring them back. July 20th. And I'll be happy to send out the invite. I will definitely be attending. Should be they did one on the Eastern Shore this past summer, and it was really great. We went out to, I forget the name of it, Chino Farms, which is managed by Washington College, and there's bobwhite quail singing throughout the meadows and all sorts of really interesting prairie species that you really got to have it. You really have to manage habitat to sustain those populations. So it's pretty great stuff.
Please, Bill. Okay, did you bring the mic close to you? Thanks.
Is it on?
Yeah, they'll turn it on.
Okay. Apologies for being late. Traffic is a little more difficult to cruise through than the internet, that's for sure. I'm getting used to that, real meetings versus internet-based. Continuing on the University of Maryland Extension vein, just wanted to alert folks that we have a new position that was approved by the state legislature. I don't know if it's been signed by the governor yet, but it was approved by both the House and the Senate, and it is called the Maryland Native Plants Bill. And it's exciting in that it provides resources for a full-time extension specialist to work with communities and individuals to restore meadows and restore plant more native plants and turn a lot of our turf areas into more natural areas and reduce native or invasive species at the same time. So I'm excited about that. And Maryland Department of Agriculture will also be running a certified commercial plant list to encourage more plantings of native plants. So pretty exciting.
Anything else to share for open floor? Yes, please.
Named has agreed to fund a reboot to our citizen science program for the next 3 years. And so we've hired a seasoned hand, a guy named Robert Caper, who's now going to not only run that citizen science-based program, he'll be training people on request around the watershed, but we'll actually be placing in people's hands at least some testing equipment that they can use locally on loan from Patuxent Riverkeeper to build a much stronger, particularly in the northern sections, freshwater sections of the river, where there's not a lot of data, I understand, available. And so look forward to that. That's something we're pretty excited about.
Yes, Alonzo?
Just a question. When you talk about the upper part of the river, are you just talking about the main stem or streams? Because a lot, there's good. Oh, very, very good. Wonderful. Okay, good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. To get. Mm-hmm.
But we're going to see what can be done.
Very good.
We've actually had also support from Techie, a business within Lexington Park.
Mm.
Actually intrigued by the challenge of the remote sensing for waterfalls.
That's wonderful.
John, what would you like to do next?
Well, I guess we've gotten to the end of our agenda. I want to take a minute just to thank everybody for coming here in person. I know that it's more effort than Google Meets or Teams or a Zoom. I think I've used all of these media since the pandemic, but to have true engagement, maybe I'm old, but there's nothing like being person to person, and I appreciate everybody coming out here this evening, and I appreciate the extra effort. And for those people in the audience, I know that we were mentioning the extension. There are local, there's local help available if you're trying to plant trees. I was, for Mother's Day, I was out shopping for trees and bushes, and my wife decided to choose some native trees and bushes this year. We have about a 3-acre place. So when we're adding to it, we're making sure that we're adding natural trees. We normally have river birches there as a natural tree in our area. So I would encourage the public to reach out if you have an opportunity or if you own some land. It's one of our stated objectives is to help the state of Maryland plant some of those 5 million trees. Dan Ryder is in charge of that project at the state level. And I promised him that we would find areas that we could plant that were in the Patuxent watershed. So I don't want to disappoint Dan Ryder with my promise. So if the public would reach out to us, we'd like to make this happen in the watershed. And with that, that's all I have to say. So I guess I would call for a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? Aye. And thank you to the public. I appreciate that.
Thank you.